Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of ESPN Cricinfo Power Play. Well, we're on the cusp of the World Cup qualifiers for the women. There are 6 teams battling it out in Pakistan for a place at the tournament in India later this year. And we managed to catch up with one player who's going to have a key role in this tournament. That's Ireland's vice captain and all-rounder, Orla Prendergast. I'm joined by my co-host Firdaus Munda. Firdaus, did you enjoy catching up with Orla, and what are you looking forward to given what she had to say to us?
Yeah, very much so. I really enjoyed chatting to her. I felt a little bit nervous and scared for her because World Cup qualifiers, I think, are the cruelest bits of our sport, to be honest. It's so difficult. You go and you have so much hope and so much expectation, and really the chances of getting there are so slim. I've covered quite a lot of World Cup qualifiers in the men's game. I'm pretty much addicted to watching the football World Cup qualifiers, and South Africa haven't qualified for a football World Cup since 2002 directly, which is in fact longer than Ireland haven't qualified for a cricket World Cup. So I just find them so grueling and so difficult and so tough. But it looks like she's pretty excited. It looks like the Irish team are up for it, and it seems they've got some really tough opposition. But I thought she was in a pretty good frame of mind, and she seemed to be ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess Ireland, no strangers to the grueling nature of these qualifiers. They got pipped by their neighbours, Scotland, to the T20 World Cup, as we remember from the final of that qualifying tournament not so long ago. We spoke to Orla about that and many other things. So let's take a listen.
Well, we've got a very special guest with us here today on ESPN Cricinfo Power Play. It's Ireland's Orla Prendergast. And Orla, it's a momentous year, I guess, for Ireland cricket because 2025 marks 20 years since they played in a Women's ODI World Cup. I don't know if you know that, but you're about to embark on the quest to try and get to this year's tournament. And, such a long period of time really, I guess, makes us wonder about the importance and the significance that you're placing on these qualifiers. Can you tell us a bit about that and your expectations for what's going to be a very exciting 10 days or so?
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't know that about the 20-year milestone with the qualifiers. That's very interesting. And ODI qualifiers are very difficult with only 2 teams going through. And yeah, we obviously haven't been successful this far in getting to an ODI World Cup, which I suppose puts a lot more emphasis and a little bit more pressure on us to make that final step and actually get there. Yeah, very tricky tournaments, and this one particularly has a lot of games back to back, and it's obviously here in Pakistan where there'll be a lot of heat and different challenges that come with that. But yeah, look, I think we all know we've been to a lot of T20 qualifiers and a good few ODI ones, and yeah, they come with a lot of pressure and different challenges, but really excited to get going.
Orla, I guess you guys are no strangers to qualifiers. You had that T20 one not so long ago and missed out to Scotland in the final. Can you just sort of talk us through what that result meant for you guys as a team? I mean, it must have been devastating at the time, but has it fueled a hunger that you can use in this tournament, or what's the mood around that qualifying tournament?
Yeah, definitely. God, that feels like a while ago now, but it was, yeah, absolutely devastating and yeah, gutting. I think, especially for smaller nations, World Cups mean an awful lot to get there and to get to play against top nations. But I suppose that's where the championship has been really big for us. That we still had a lot of fixtures. England and Sri Lanka came over to us over the summer. And yeah, I think off the back of not qualifying, I think we probably felt like we had a bit more of a point to prove. We know how good a side we are and how we can take on the best teams in the world, and missed out on the chance to do that. So then I think when England and Sri Lanka came over, we were almost double as motivated and put a lot more pressure on ourselves to really put it up to them. And yeah, played some really good cricket in our own backyard. And I think we won 5 out of 10 games across those 2 series. So really, I think we proved a point, and yeah, hopefully showed that we really should have been at that World Cup, even though we didn't directly qualify.
And Orla, you've spoken about the games you've played and also about the difficulties of qualifiers. I mean, World Cup qualifying is really one of the hardest things I think that countries go through, whether it's cricket, whether it's football. I know you also played a little bit of age group football for your country, so it'd be nice to hear about that. But how do you prepare for this? Because I guess, it could end in a lot of heartbreak, and you're so close, but then at the same time, you could be so far away.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the tricky thing with qualifiers is the importance each game has. I think you're going into if you're going into a tri series or a bilateral series, you know you've got 5, 6 games against the same team. Each result obviously matters a massive amount, but you know there's another game right around the corner that doesn't directly impact the one before. Whereas, yeah, these were our first games against Pakistan. We have to win that game to know that we could qualify. And you obviously come to these tournaments, you have to win the majority of your games, if not all your games. Yeah, and I think each game is like a mini event. Really, it's like it's a different kind of pressure. And definitely, I think my first T20 qualifiers was a good few years ago now, but I remember a completely different sense of nerves and pressure with that tournament, and it definitely is just one attached to qualifying tournaments for me personally. It's a different kind of nerves that I get before the game when you know just how much is on the line.
Yeah, and you mentioned Pakistan, the hosts, of course, with your first game there. But there's some big names here. West Indies, who I think will be very, very disappointed to find themselves in a qualifying campaign, having won at T20 level. And Bangladesh, who I think we've all been looking at as a side that's really come up. They've won a lot of matches. They were in South Africa not so long ago, and they beat South Africa here for the first time. So I guess those are the countries that we're talking about: West Indies, Pakistan, perhaps Bangladesh. Have you identified them as the biggest threats? Or, I mean, are you looking at Scotland and thinking, oh, goodness, maybe them again?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Ireland Scotland is always a really good game, and there's some fierce rivalry there. But yeah, I think when you come to tournaments like these, Thailand are a really good side as well. You definitely can't take them lightly in any sense. And there's obviously Windies are a very big side. A lot of really good players. Pakistan and Bangladesh are both very good teams. So yeah, it's a really tricky competition. I think there's 5 very good teams there, and really hard to kind of look at to pick 2 or 3 teams, because then the other two could come out and have really good games. So it's not really a case of that for us. I think we know our own strengths. We know the way we want to play our cricket and our style of ODI cricket. And I think we know that if we stick to that, stick to our own plans, I think we can beat any team here.
Well, you mentioned it was sort of a different kind of nerves when you're coming to tournament cricket and qualifiers and that sort of thing. It always sort of fascinates me how athletes prepare mentally for that kind of stage and performing, when it really, really, really counts. Can you just sort of talk us through what sort of things you've done over the course of your career to prepare for a really big opportunity like this?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a few different things. I think one thing I try and focus on is almost not thinking about the games to come, but almost thinking about the games in the past that we've played and that I've performed in personally, that I can kind of draw confidence from and take things from into these tournaments. It sounds simple, but not thinking about the outcome. I think just going out and batting and bowling, thinking about what I'm doing right there and then. It's hard when you know what's on the line, but it's not going to help if you're thinking about, oh, if I do this, if I do that, and if this doesn't come off, if that doesn't work, then you can spiral, which definitely has happened to me. So I think it's trying to stay as present as possible, both in my build up to the game, in the warm up, and when I'm completing my skills.
You know all about pressure. We mentioned that football participation that you've had in the past. I'm interested to know a little bit about that. Can you tell us about your development through another sport, and why did you choose cricket?
Yeah, I played a load of football growing up. I have 2 brothers, and my dad played a lot of football, so it was we were definitely much more of a football household, I'd say. Played a bit of cricket in the summer, but I always focused a lot more on football. And yeah, I suppose I played a good bit of international football through under 15, 16, 17, and then I was 17 or 18, and there's a few of the girls down in my local club that were going, oh, would you not kind of give the international cricket a proper go and see? I played youth, gone on youth international tours, but they're only about a few days or a week or so, and I hadn't thought much about actually trying to push on. I was always more focused on football side of things. And yeah, I suppose one summer I think we had qualifiers and a couple of tournaments that I decided to go and play in. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. I think the team environment, the atmosphere in the group was really, really nice. And I just didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. So yeah, it was definitely a tricky decision. There wasn't one that kind of it took a while to come to, because it got to the point where I couldn't keep going with both, and I obviously loved them both a lot. But yeah, I think I just decided to take the plunge of cricket. And yeah, I haven't really looked back since, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. It's actually the same, almost the same for me. I started off covering both football and cricket, and then had to make a
Oh,
decision,
really?
and then this is where we are. But I want to
Mm.
talk a little bit about, the development that we've seen through the island cricketing structures. I mean, we know that I've just heard that the football will have an expanded World Cup from 2031 onwards, 48 teams, which seems, I mean, do 48 teams even play cricket at an elite level, What are you seeing development-wise? Are there lots of young girls who wanting to play the game? I know you guys are building a stadium. What are the facilities and the infrastructure developments like? And can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we obviously got contracts in recently in the last 4 or 5 years or so. That was absolutely massive for us. A lot of the girls were working, and a lot of the younger girls, including myself, were in college or in school and juggling both. And yeah, now we're at the stage where a good few of us are kind of turning 22, 23, and moving out of college and just onto full-time contracts. Which is a really exciting time for us as a group to have more full-time players, and players just we train a lot, gym a lot of running sessions. I think you can really see that kind of development within the group. And yeah, I suppose we're very conscious of I think cricket is still it's a niche sport in Ireland. Definitely, it's still minor. There's a lot of sports that kind of overrun it. But it's definitely growing, which is really exciting. I think there's not a lot of clubs, so there's maybe eight, nine, 10 women's clubs. In Dublin, that is. There's more up north, and I think we can all see a lot of growth at the youth level with different girls coming down and playing and trying it. And I suppose that's down to I think it almost spanned off the contracts, brought a lot more. Like we started playing more fixtures, the championship, it all just grew a massive amount in the last few years. And yeah, I suppose media has followed suit in that case. I think we're getting onto the different kind of news broadcasters a lot more, which is really exciting. Had our first games last summer streamed on live TV, which was huge. And luckily those are ones that we won against England, which is really exciting. So yeah, different things like that. I think you can really feel the growth of cricket in Ireland.
Orla, you had the experience of playing domestic cricket in England in 2023. You joined Western Storm, and then last year for the Blaze. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what that sort of did, do you think, for your game? And yeah, just sort of what benefits you took from and what you made of the structure here, which is changing again, but just your thoughts on that experience.
Yeah, a really good experience. That was my first kind of, I suppose, franchisee-ish experience going over there to play county cricket. When I went over to Storm in 2023, and yeah, absolutely loved it. I think there's a lot of differences over there, that I think we're trying to grow towards in Ireland. It's a slow enough process to try and get there, but I think the amount of teams they have, there's a lot of different regions with obviously a lot of good players over there. The facilities were unreal. Yeah, good, so many grass pitches, which is we have a few here in Ireland to train on, but they're unfortunately not quite as nice as the ones over there to bat on. So yeah, I think different things like that. There's a lot of different coaches. It's always nice to get different opinions on your game and different thoughts on how you can improve. So yeah, I think those are kind of the main things that made a big difference to me. And yeah, I think any opportunity that comes up, I'm always really happy to take it and try and further my game.
And then on that, you played in the WBBL as well. What was that like?
Yeah, amazing. Such a cool experience. I think, yeah, the players I got to play with over there is definitely a highlight. Talia McGrath was my captain. She's obviously another all-rounder, and one of the best in the world. To be able to play alongside her is really big. Yeah, an unreal experience. Stadiums. I think my debut was in Adelaide Oval, and played in the Gabba, different grounds like that. So yeah, different things like that. The crowds that came to the games was another thing that I hadn't experienced an awful lot before. Um, yeah, had an absolutely great time. Unfortunately, the results weren't quite as good as we would have hoped for with the strikers, but such a good experience.
I'm biased. I think Adelaide Oval's the most beautiful cricket ground in the world, but I'm from there.
I'd have to agree, yeah.
Nice one. So I guess just in terms of that Australian experience then and the franchise experience and playing, with those superstars of the game, was there a key thing at all among the many things that you sort of would take away from that experience, do you think, that you can use going forward?
I think learnings from the different senior players we had there. I obviously I swing the ball in and was bowling with Megan Shute, a good bit over there, who's obviously one of the best in swingers in the world, if not the best. So learned a lot from her. I remember my first session there, she came over and was talking about variations, different things, which is obviously massive to be able to learn from her and pick her brains is really big. So I think that's probably the main thing I would think about when I think about those experiences, is just the different learnings you can get.
Yeah, Megan is a good friend of ESPN Cricinfo. We've had some time with her at the T20 World Cup, and in fact, she told us she became an in-swing bowler pretty much by accident because she wasn't so good at anything else. So a really great accident to happen. But Ola, someone like that, you know, who's sort of achieved all the accolades and who you say is somebody that you look up to, it must be really great to think that you're playing in the same kind of environment as her and in the same league as her. And we know that last year you were nominated for the ICC's T20 Player of the Year, which must have been something really special for you. Can you tell us a bit about, you know, what it's like to be recognized among the superstars and to see your name up there with the best in the world?
Yeah, definitely. It's an amazing feeling. I think it's not something that I think about a massive amount. I think obviously when I'm playing for Ireland, I'm just playing with the group of girls that we have out there. Don't really think about anything like that. I think we've got a different challenges that we face as a team a lot, kind of being underdogs in a lot of games that we play in the championship, being one of the lower ranked sides. So yeah, I suppose when I'm playing, I'm just trying to put up performances to win games for Ireland. Any of that comes after, I'm obviously always really proud of and excited to see, and it's massive for me personally. But yeah, I don't think I think about those things a massive amount. But whenever it does come around, yeah, I'm always very proud of it.
Yeah, and I guess for the girls in the camp with you, you know, knowing that one of their own players is right up there being spoken about must be pretty motivational. What kinds of things do you think it means for them to have yourself, Gabby Lewis, who, you know, has also achieved so much, players like that around? And do you think that there's particular skills that you can then teach them or that can rub off onto some of the girls around you? I know you're still quite young, but having been recognized, does that kind of add a little bit of something?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, we're obviously a really young side, and we've got younger girls coming through all the time, a couple of really young spinners. And yeah, I suppose it's kind of strange to think, 'cause I'm only 22, that I'm one of the more senior and experienced players in the squad. But that's definitely something that is another bonus of franchise cricket, is bringing those learnings back. Something I'm very conscious of is trying to kind of soak in all I can and bring back, even not necessarily skills based, but the way different teams do it, things like analysis, the way sessions go, schedules, things like that, that are just interesting to get insights into. You can kind of filter back to your own setup and see how you can change things or improve things a little bit more. And yeah, I think we're a really close knit group. Like, I think I play with some of my best friends, which makes it really all the more special when you're playing. And yeah, I think we all support each other a massive amount. And any kind of personal accolades that come to any player, it's almost like the team success. We're really good at celebrating each other's successes.
Orla, you've got a couple of key players coming back from injury to the squad. I think Amy Hunter's back and Jane Maguire. Can you just sort of talk a little bit about, you know, what it's like having them back? And is there anyone else in the squad that we need to be keeping our eye out for during these qualifiers?
Yeah, definitely very glad to have Amy and Jane back. Obviously, Amy is a top order batter and our keeper. So she was a big miss for us in India, unfortunately. So delighted to have her back, and Jane missed out with injury. So great to have another experienced seamer back at the side. And then I suppose we have Kaya McCartney coming in. It's her first senior tour. Yeah, an off spinner. Really exciting prospect. Was at the Under-19 World Cup and has played in our Interpros back home for a good few years now. So yeah, really excited to see how she goes. And Cara Murray also back in the squad. A lot of experience, but has missed out in the last couple of tours. Yeah, she's obviously a leg spinner. I think whenever you have a leg spinner on, I think there's always a feeling that something could happen. And she's definitely one of those bowlers that when she comes on, you get a sense that something's going to happen.
And Ola, you're kind of at the start of I guess the season now. You've got it seems to start with like quite a lot of pressure for you guys, and then the end, I guess, is that ODI World Cup in India, which obviously you're really hoping to be at. But in the middle, you've got a lot of fixtures coming up as well. Talk to us a little bit about the summer, what you're looking forward to. Maybe just leaving aside the next 10 days, which I know will be kind of hectic for you guys. But when you're looking at the summer, what are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, we've got a few home series coming up. Really exciting. Zimbabwe are coming over to us, and Pakistan. So two really exciting series to look forward to. And Yeah, I think we've got a bit of a break after the qualifiers, a lot of interpros for us back home. Yeah, heavy couple of months of those and then into some internationals towards the back end of the summer. Yeah, I think last summer we made some pretty incredible memories with those games against Sri Lanka and England. And yeah, I'll be looking to kind of replicate that again and get some more wins on home soil.
Well, Orla, we can't wait to see what happens over the coming weeks and months. And we know it's very busy for you, but we thank you so much for your time and for joining us on ESPN Cricinfo Power Play.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Well, so great to hear from Orla Prendergast there. Personally, my favorite part of the interview is that she had to make a choice between two elite sports, football and cricket, and she chose cricket, which I guess is great for our game and perhaps not so great for football. But it looks as though, you know, she's part of a family with a lot of talent. You find that so often in cricketing circles in countries, smaller countries, I suppose, like Ireland, where everybody tends to play for the same club. Everybody knows everybody, everybody's friends with everybody. And it sounds as though Ireland are taking this really seriously. She mentioned some of the other contenders: West Indies, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Scotland. I guess the one we're not really talking about is Thailand. Vux, do you think we're likely to see anything other than, I guess, what we predicted before, which is West Indies and Bangladesh to go through, maybe Pakistan to miss out, which will be heartbreaking? Anything else that we can look forward to, do you think?
Yeah, do you know what? I guess because it's fresh in your mind and having spoken to her, I will be really interested to see how Ireland go and, you know, whether they really have, I mean, she said they were really toughened up from that disappointment of the T20 World Cup qualifiers, played really well in domestic series after that. So whether they can, I mean, that was a while ago now, whether they can carry that forward and in the one-day format remains to be seen. It's hard from a conversation to know whether, you know, there was anything there to sway, you know, me away from my original picks, which was West Indies and Bangladesh to get through. Pakistan host probably missing out, but I guess who knows? Did you hear anything or have you had any thoughts outside of our chat with Orla that make you change your mind on who you think's going to go through?
I don't think so. I'm happy to see Diana Baig is back for Pakistan. She's been named in the squad. We know she had a mystery injury at the T20 World Cup. We think it was a hamstring, but nobody really wanted to tell us what was going on. And every time they just said she's going to play and she never did. So I'm happy to see that she is back. I think she's a potent player for them, also a former footballer. In fact, played for the Pakistan national team. So my bias is clear. But one thing I do think is worth talking about is just the venues of the Women's World Cup, which were announced after our last podcast and before this one. And personally, I'm pretty disappointed. I was hoping that we would see the games at the big grounds, at places like Eden Gardens, the Wankhede in Mumbai. I actually really hope that Chennai would get some matches because we know that the crowds there are really good for the women's game and they haven't even had any WPL games. So I really thought it would be great to see the game taken to the bigger centers. And instead, what we're seeing is that 5 venues have been announced, some of them on the coast, which are really nice, like the one in Kerala. But the others indoor, I don't know if we can expect big crowds for women's cricket there. And the final to be hosted at Mulanpur in Punjab, which is the home of Chandigarh now. They've moved away from the old stadium where I remember covering test matches and the wires would be coming out of the press box walls and you weren't really sure if you were going to make it through the day. So it's good that they moved. But I'm just not sure that this is kind of what we wanted from a Women's World Cup from a profile perspective. You know, the last one had to be moved and we played that in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and got some great crowds. But the one before that, South Africa, the final was at Newlands. We've had finals at the MCG. We've had a Women's ODI World Cup final at Lords. So, Valks, are you looking forward to Mulanpur or are you kind of Googling where it is?
Yeah, hold my hands up. I was asking a few questions of our colleagues in India to tell me a little bit more about this place and the stadium. Yeah, I was disappointed too. And just, I think too, off the back of, you know, our 2 most recent episodes speaking about the WPL and the great venues they've been playing at and the crowds they've been getting. And there was a real sense of momentum and hope and, you know, excitement that, you know, this was going to, you know, be replicated for the World Cup. And, yeah, now that remains to be seen. Like you say, I mean, I don't know what sort of crowds these venues are going to pull. We can hope that it will be good. But yeah, it did feel, yeah, a little bit of a letdown, particularly straight off the back of the WPL and all the hype around that. And I know sort of here in England and also in Australia with the Women's Ashes that we've just seen, there's, you know, big push to play in big venues. And I mean, I guess that was a bit of a gamble in terms of, you know, a test at the MCG, you know, that massive, massive stadium. And it was like, how is this going to go? Because realistically, you know, if you can get 20 to 30,000 in that, you know, massive, massive stadium, then that is a great result. And I think in the end, you know, they were happy with it, and it was more, they were willing to do it just because of the iconic nature of the venue and the fact that it is, you know, a big stage, and, you know, they wanted to go that way. And I think they're happy, you know, with how it went. And so it's probably, you know, a bit of a, you know, if you build it, they will come kind of thing, in the sense that, you know, we've got these venues available. And in Australia, it's not ideal because all the venues are absolutely massive. Whereas somewhere in England, you've got those great boutique 20,000 seat stadiums that are actually perfect if you're looking to fill it for the women's game. So, but I think the fact that they're looking to stage these, you know, women's matches at these, you know, big venues, it's sort of a bit of, you know, it's a gesture, and it's like, look, you know, we're putting this on at these venues, and, you know, come and take a look.
Yeah, absolutely. And South Africa, whose men's team are only playing 5 T20s this summer at home because they're on the road a lot, and there are no home test matches as the pitches get prepared for the 2027 World Cup. The women's team, in fact, will be playing at all the big venues around the country. So this time they're going to have matches at Kingsmead, Supersport Park, the Wanderers, which is fabulous. I was mistaken and thought they'd never played at the Wanderers before, but it was something like 2001 or 2 or whatever, you know, before people were watching women's cricket. So also a long time ago. And yeah, I guess we'll have to see. India, one thing we can say about it, it's got a lot of venues, and so they have plenty and plenty and plenty of choice, and they've chosen these 5. Should we make the trip, we will be traveling from the north all the way to the south, so there's a lot of ground to cover to get to those places, and I think it'll present some interesting challenges conditions wise. And obviously the teams that we're talking about, the teams who are looking to win this tournament, who maybe won't come out of the qualifiers necessarily, of course the hosts India, who had a disappointing T20 World Cup, Australia, who win everything all the time. I don't know about South Africa, especially in Indian conditions. They are playing a tri-series in Sri Lanka later this month to try and get some sort of acclimatization. But the big one, the team that always thinks they're going to win everything and somehow don't often do, is England. And this time they've got a new coach. And this is really the big woman's story of the last couple of weeks. So, Volks, I know you thought it would be Charlotte Edwards, so you were right on that front. And what do you think? I mean, does it seem like things are going to change massively?
It has all been happening since our last episode, hasn't it? So England have lost their coach, John Lewis. Heather Knight is no longer captain, although she will stay on available in a playing capacity. And Charlotte Edwards appointed to replace John Lewis as head coach. Yes, I do think things will change massively. You mentioned that I thought it would be her. It turns out that so too did the ECB straight up. I think they knew they wanted her and just, you know, asked her would she like the role. Didn't go through. We spoke with Claire Connor, the head of women's cricket at the ECB, and she basically said we didn't go through the normal open recruiting process. We just managed to entice Lottie, as they call her here, to take on the job. She spoke to the media earlier this week. Actually, so it'll be when we actually go to air. It'll be a week ago. But yeah, and really impressive. She didn't say huge amounts, but she said huge amounts, if you know what I mean. Like, just everything she said made really good sense and made you think, yeah, there are changes afoot here. So I think the key takeaways were, there were so many of them, but it was the one thing that stood out for me was that she said, my job is about winning games of cricket. So, and she said, she said some, but it's a really good point, because she said sometimes as coaches, we're a bit squeamish about saying, I want to win. So this is sort of somewhat at odds with the mantra that the England team have had under John Lewis for over 2 years now, which is that inspire and entertain, you know, as long as we're playing the right way, everything's fine. And that really did come back to bite them, particularly, you know, in the Ashes, you know, early on, there was a couple of losses and it was like, but we're playing how we want to play. As long as we do that, it will come. And actually, by that stage, it was really clear that it wasn't working. So that's been dispensed with, and it's actually the focus is on winning, and that makes perfect sense to me, whether people like to say it or not. I mean, you're in, you know, you're in elite sport, of course, that is the number one aim. In terms of how they go about that, so she was yet to meet the team. She's going to meet the sort of management this week. So, you know, but again, by the time we go to air, she will have just started meeting the squad up in Loughborough at their training base. In terms of preparation and things like that, all England centrally contracted players, injury permitting, will need to be available for the first 7 rounds of the domestic 50 over competition. So basically they want them playing cricket, and the focus is going to be on performance with a view to selection.
Wow.
So they've put that out there. It's pretty clear. You need to be playing cricket early season, and then we're going to take a look at you and see if you earn your cap. And on this topic of selection, they're going to appoint a national selector, which is something that they haven't had since the women's game turned professional here in England. So it's generally sort of been a panel of coach, captain, and sort of head of the program, that sort of thing. But there hasn't been an actually appointed national selector. So that's a recruitment process they're undertaking very shortly. So there's a lot of changes afoot, just in terms of basically getting them ready, because remember there's 6 months before that World Cup in India. And what was also impressive about what Charlotte Edwards said was, it's not, you know, she's hitting the ground running. It's not like, oh, you know, we're just sort of, it's a transition. It's like, no, we have a 6 months to be ready to win a World Cup. And she said, you know, I'm confident that we've got the players to do that. It's just, you know, now my job to make it happen. So yeah, really impressive. What do you think? I mean, it's hard to know, you know, crystal ball gazing, but you know, what did you make of the changes, and do you think it's a good thing, and do you think they are going to be a threat come that World Cup time?
I think they're always a threat. I mean, from everything you've said to me now, it sounds like England are actually doing what they should have been doing all along, which is, we want to win games of cricket, we're appointing a selector, like all this very basic kind of stuff. I'm interested on the captaincy decision. And you probably have your finger on the pulse into who that will be, and you were right on the coach. So I'm hoping that you're going to be correct on the captain as well, and you'll tell us that in a moment. It does sound as though they really mean business, which I suppose England always really mean business. The one thing I'm very interested in is that Charlotte Edwards played quite recently, you know, and it's not such a huge gap between her playing days and her coaching days. And that has been an interesting question around how soon a player should become involved in coaching after they've been playing. And it's one of the reasons I think that Danisha Devnarayan, who's South Africa's under-19 coach, hasn't quite come into the conversation as the national head coach yet, because she retired very recently, probably even why someone like Shabnam Ismail hasn't come into the conversation either. And I think there's an idea that you need a little bit, or maybe quite a long gap between when you finish playing and when you re-enter the fray as a coach. So I'm interested to see how that works, and how, you know, whether it means she's closer to the modern game and closer to what's happening in terms of modern understandings of players' lives, or whether it means that she's too close. Will be very interesting to see. But who's your pick for captain? I think I know. I think I have a suspicion, but I'm going to let you say it.
Oh, okay. So there's a bit to unpack there. Can I first go back? And I'm not buying time because I have thought about this, but I just want to go back quickly to a point that you made about the length of time between, you know, retiring as captain. And that was clearly thought to be a factor. Particularly when the job came up 2 years ago, and initially Charlotte Edwards said she was interested, and then said, no, actually, I want to pursue my franchise opportunities first. And then there was sort of a, you know, reading into it, a lot of people assumed, well, you know, she needs more time to create that distance. But I think for me, the point is what she's done in that time. She's gone away. She spent 5 years as a hugely successful franchise coach, 8 titles in that time. So Mumbai Indians, 2 titles in 3 years. She's been coaching, you know, through the 100 in the WBBL. So she's gone and got all this experience. So she comes back, and it's almost like, yes, she feels that a sufficient amount of time has passed. She came and said, I feel I'm a much better coach than I ever was a captain, quite bluntly. And I think that she's now, you know, she's got the credentials. So she can come in. It could have been 3 years and she'd won, you know, 5 titles. She can come back and say, look, I know what I'm doing here now. You know, I've got the silverware to prove it. So I guess, she kind of feels like she's now ready to take on this job. Incidentally, she has stepped away from jobs with Hampshire, Mumbai Indians and Sydney Sixers to fully focus on the England role. So there won't be any sort of, dipping out to go and coach at the WPL and that kind of thing. So she's fully focused. So yeah, it's more what she's done in that passage of time between being a player, coming back and still coaching, some players that she will have played with, but with a completely different outlook now. So on to your key question, captaincy, right? So I hadn't forgotten, but it's much less clear cut, I think, than the coach. Like, I was, definitely. I think all along, even before Heather Knight, lost the captaincy, it was who is going to step in, who is really screaming out as a candidate. So they had, with her as captain, they had a leadership group of Nat Sciver-Brunt, who has stepped in at times, Amy Jones, who has stepped in at times, and Sophie Eccleston. So there was a leadership group, almost, players sort of in waiting or who could step in. But in terms of any of them actually sort of screaming out to be it, so Nat Sciver-Brunt got called on during that T20 World Cup when Heather Knight got injured in the last match they ended up playing against West Indies, and they lost terribly. So she sort of had to step in a pretty difficult situation. And then John Lewis ended up coming onto the field to sort of try and help, direct traffic. You were there, you saw it. I think, we've both written about it. So, there's that element of it. And she did sort of say, when asked, would you like the captaincy? She said, of course, if it ever comes up. But I mean, that's what she would say. If she turned around and said, oh, no, then that's, a negative story, isn't it? So I think she sort of said, oh, yes, sure, if it ever came along, but, whether, she wasn't. It's an awkward situation, isn't it? Because you can't, when you've got a captain there and you're playing with them, go, yeah, I want their job. It's awkward. But Amy Jones, when she stepped in to do it a couple of years ago, I mean, she sort of quite openly said, the on-field leadership thing isn't something that comes naturally to me. It's something that I've got to work at. And then, I mean, Sophie Eccleston, I mean, she shoulders the load in terms of carrying the bowling attack. I mean, there's a lot of responsibility on her. And then there was obviously, some off-field stuff with, reports of her, refusing an interview in light of the criticism they were getting. So, a captain's got to be able to sort of just put that aside and do the job. So, I mean, whether that's a learning curve for her and she, she's now ready, I mean, maybe, she might make that argument if she wants the job. But yeah, in terms of a real standout, there's a couple of other names kicking around. One is Charlie Dean. So, the off spinner, she's played about 80 games for England already now. She will be a teammate of Heather Knight at Somerset under the domestic structure this year. She's moved from Hampshire to Somerset. She's, I asked her about that at Somerset's media day, actually, and she sort of said, well, it's nice to be mentioned in those conversations, but whether I'm ready for that sort of a leadership, I don't know. I think I've got a bit of learning to do. So she was quite upfront about that, but she's one, possibly, well, I mean, I think certainly for the future. And then another name floating around is Grace Scrivens, the under-19 captain. She's out in Australia with England A, but she's not played a game for the senior side yet. So I think what will happen, and this is just me thinking, I think they might go Nat Sciver-Brunt with the experience for a couple of years with a view to maybe someone like a Charlie Dean or Grace Scrivens if she does end up playing for the senior side, over the next 2 years. If she then comes out, as a, in her early 20s as someone who's just a standout, then maybe she sort of takes over. So, there's options. You've also got Tammy Beaumont, who's vastly experienced and quite a, I think you can see leadership qualities in her. She commentates, she plays, and you can you can see her having that, experience to lead with, but she's not in the T20 setup at the moment. All that might change. Course, yeah. Charlotte Edwards told us, that she's got a very clear idea who she wants. So I could, have just wasted, 7 minutes there talking through the candidates, and she comes out with someone that she knows will be better. But it'll be really interesting. Well, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think she's really going to surprise us, or is she going to go with the plan?
No, I thought it was going to be a short answer, to be honest with you. I thought it would be Natseva-Brandt. I've thought that pretty much throughout. She's obviously, her life has changed now with the arrival of a baby boy, which I know that her and Catherine were really looking forward to, and that that brings its own dimensions. We've seen it particularly in the men's game when parenthood happens, things change. So it'll be interesting to see what that does to Natseva-Brandt, and also to how much she would want to travel. Of course, Catherine, we know, commentates and is often around as well, but maybe that will change a little bit too, with a little one to look after, and I'm sure that comes with its own challenges. But I thought it was a pretty clear case that she would take over. I was very surprised to hear Charlie Dean come into the conversation. I know that's been kind of floating around the last couple of weeks. I've never got the impression that she wanted the leadership role. She never kind of struck me as one of the players who was in that group. I don't think Sophie Eccleston will be the worst choice. I think she'll be very entertaining as a captain, especially for us on the sidelines. And I think she'll always tell it like it is, even if it's maybe not something we want to hear. So I don't think too many surprises. I think a new coach would prefer a safer start, would be the way that I would think about it. And I think the one thing I think with England, and I think this often about them, is that they tend to place a lot of expectation on themselves, and then if they fall short, and it makes sense, right? They've got a professional structure and that sort of thing, but things seem to fall apart and unravel in almost like excessively when things don't go well. So I wonder what they're expecting of themselves from a World Cup in India, where certainly the hosts will be expecting that they have to go on and win a global tournament. Of course, we know what Australia will expect. And I really will say, I don't think that South Africa will be expecting too much this time around, just because some of the older players are probably on the verge of being moved on. And I don't know that there's enough of a younger crop coming through, and the coach is fairly new. And I think that for them, it's just a kind of let's see where we are type of tournament. So it'll be interesting as we build up to that World Cup. We've got some cricket coming up, of course, that South Africa Tri-Series that we spoke about. That's coming up towards the end of April. The World Cup qualifiers that we'll be keeping an eye on. Anything else on your side? I suppose summer's just kicking off. I mean, you're almost time for your 2 weeks in June or whatever it is when the sun shines in the UK.
Absolutely. So cue the rain in. Well, the championship got underway today and it's grey, but okay. But April 19th is the start of the women's 50 over competition. So we're only a couple of weeks away from that. And that's a completely new look tournament in terms of the teams now being aligned with the counties. So we've got the tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 system, so they'll all be getting underway quite soon, so that'll be quite interesting. It was interesting sort of chatting to going to a few of the media days over the last couple of weeks, and sort of seeing what it was like being, part of this whole club structure, and sort of asked a few of the players, and the women's players, like, the facilities are great, we've been welcomed, it's just so good to have, and they've made, adjustments with change rooms so that we've got, various things that needed to be done there, and, really, felt welcomed. The guys were noticing that it was a lot busier around the place. They kind of didn't have the facilities to themselves quite as much. So they were sort of noticing a lot of traffic, but that, they seem very, welcoming and happy about it. But it is quite an adjustment for everybody. And yeah, it'll just be really interesting to see not only, the competition on the field. I mean, that's really interesting, but also to whether this alignment with the counties does draw, from the existing fan base and attract new fans to the counties themselves, ones that want to watch the women's game. So yeah, that'll be really interesting, and that's sort of coming up in the next couple of weeks. So I'd be really interested to see what happens domestically here in England.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds really, really interesting, and something that we want to keep an eye on, because English cricket is changing, domestic cricket is changing. There's new ownership involved in the 100 as well. So I think that will be something really worth keeping an eye on. It doesn't always sound like the most exciting thing, but it is quite interesting that there's that affiliation with the women's and the men's teams now, which I think in a place like South Africa has been going on always. We've always had that. We don't really have women's teams operating outside of those structures. Even if some of them are operating under the smaller men's provincial unions, for example. So I'm looking forward to keeping an eye on that, but most importantly, looking forward to the World Cup qualifiers, which kick off on April the 9th, and we'll be keeping an eye on the teams that we picked to go through, but of course everyone else. And we know that Pakistan's qualification is probably going to be the story here, because if they do qualify, it will mean another hybrid tournament with them probably playing the games in the UAE or Sri Lanka. And if they don't qualify, I think it will lead to some massive introspection in terms of how the game is progressing in that country. So we look forward to bringing you that and all the news from the cricketing world as the British summer kicks off. And we'll be with you through all of that on ESPN Cricinfo Power Play.